Good evening, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Guy. So we're clearly here to celebrate the role and the impact of the SME investment community, the startup and the scale-up businesses that have the potential to really drive growth for Great Britain. So what I want to do in my short time here is to share with you a couple of stories and pull out one or two messages which I think are fundamentally important to how we can create stronger, thriving businesses going into the future. So why am I here? As Claudia kindly mentioned, I've sailed twice around the world, most recently with my 3 children. They were 9, 7, and 2. So before I go any further, I just want to check in. Who here has kids? Okay, I thought most people. Who here remembers being a child? Okay, I think we've got most of the room covered. And you can put your hand up again if you think I must be absolutely insane to take a 2-year-old around the world. Okay, look, that's the usual reaction. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But in essence, we had 5 years preparing for our voyage. And I'm going to share a small amount of that with you this evening. And what it's going to come back to is some key messages which I think will be valuable and relevant for the businesses that you all work with. And the core concept I want to talk about is how can you take business leadership principles and apply them in the context of family, because I think that's fundamentally very, very powerful. There's some really strong concepts there which can both build stronger, thriving businesses and stronger, thriving families, very much picking up on the messages that Guy was talking about. So my first story, I want to take you back to 2009. So back then, my business was relatively small. We were losing money, and the business was clearly struggling. But more than that, my marriage was struggling as well. I barely saw my wife. I barely saw the kids. And it was pretty tough. And we had a choice. It could have gone one way, or it could have gone horribly wrong. But here's what we did that was a little bit different. My wife and I, we sat down, and we started to sketch out a vision of the future. Where do we want to go? What's truly important to us as a family? And it took us 6 months to create a vision of the future. Now, for us, our vision was we wanted to sail around the world for 2 years with our young family. Now, I get that's at the extreme end of things, and most of you won't create family visions that are similar to that. But we created this vision statement, we wrote it out by hand, and we put it on the kitchen wall at home. A vision statement, much like you'd have in a business. We talked about our purpose, our mission. Why was that important? The reason why for us was we wanted to create magical, life-changing experiences for us and our family. That was our purpose. That was our mission, much the same as you have in a business. What this did is this started to galvanize us as a family, and it started to create energy rather than taking away energy and draining things away. It got us united. And the amazing thing about that was all that energy then started to transfer over to the business, and we really started to gain momentum. As we were doing that, we started to do a lot of work on values inside the business, and we really got inside those and what that meant for the company. That was another thing that accelerated us even further. And I looked at that and thought, maybe we can apply those principles at home as well, because we need to figure out how we're going to work as a family team to sail around the world. So we took business values, we adapted them to family values, and we anchored that in our family. All the while, what we're doing is we're taking business concepts and applying them in a family context, and we were taking family concepts like building on each other's strengths, caring about each other, and applying those principles in the business. It was those principles that enabled us to sail around the world for 2 years as a family. It was those principles that enabled us to build an incredible team in the business, and we ended up selling that, as Claudia mentioned, from Mid-Pacific. So that's my first story. It's all about taking those fundamental business principles, applying them at home, and vice versa. Because I think by doing that, you create stronger, thriving businesses with people united and family at home. And I talk about family, by the way, in the widest context. It's those people who are most important to you in life, who you spend time with outside work. My second story is one about resilience. Now, you know that in 2 years sailing around the world, something is going to go wrong at some point. Much as you know, in your business, things are going to go wrong at some point. Whether it's Brexit, whether it's employee issues, whether it's customer issues, there are going to be issues at some point. So, what was our drama? What happened to us as we sailed around the world? I'm going to have a dramatic pause for some water. So, we were deep in the Pacific Ocean. We were about 500 miles from the nearest piece of land, roughly the distance from here to the top of Scotland. And we had complete power failure on the boat. Now, what does that mean? Well, power on a boat literally drives everything. The autopilot, which steers the boat, the electronic navigation systems, the lights, the cooker, the water pumps, everything. We're completely isolated and out there on our own. And of course, you always have terrible weather conditions when you're in the middle of a crisis like that. The question is, what would you do in that scenario? I'm pretty convinced that if I'd been back in my corporate days, my first instinct would have been, it's your fault. Why didn't you do this? And start to blame somebody. But we didn't do that. Those values that we talked about, every day we had values prizes for the children, and we talked about what was right rather than what was wrong. Our values were things like learn something, laugh, love, understanding, and we were training them to focus on what was right. So when everything went wrong, what did we do? We very simply found the humor in the situation. In our instance, we told the kids we didn't have any working toilets, and we introduced them to the bucket, so they were howling with laughter as they lined up on deck to poo in the bucket and chuck it over the side. It's affectionately called the bucket and chuck it system. And for the next 4 days, my wife and I, we hand-steered the boat between us. We were literally steering by the sun, the moon, the stars. We'd steer for half an hour at a time each, and the kids would bring us up food and water on deck. And we didn't just survive in that situation. We literally thrived together as a family. And here's the point. Stuff's going to go wrong. The only thing that matters is how you deal with it. And I'm super proud that we've been able to show our kids a blueprint for how you deal with adversity. For the entrepreneurs, I believe it's such a fundamental thing. How do you deal with failure? What do you do in that circumstance? And I think the family model has an awful lot to offer to businesses. So you guys are here to celebrate some amazing things with the Investor Growth Awards. And the message I would leave you with is to think about the concepts of taking business leadership lessons and applying them in business, and take family leadership lessons and apply them in business. Thrive both in family and in your businesses. Thank you.